June 9, 2024. No, it's a little later than that, but it's NXT HEATWAVE in the middle of the summer. Live from Canada. We've got a fatal four-way main event. We've got a lot going on, and it's a champion's disadvantage, where he only has a 25% chance of retaining his title. We'll find out about that with Trick Williams at HEATWAVE. But overall, a pretty good show tonight. I wanted to remind you guys my rules for NXT as always. This is developmental territory. 2 out of the 5 superstars that you see will not make it on the main roster. But which ones will? That's the true question in this one. Training is in progress, in other words. Whenever you watch an NXT PLE, I'm going to give you all the highlights and delights. I'm your host, Bryan, the Hype Ballard, back at it again with HEATWAVE 2024. Let's get in. We start out, we look at the real quick pre-show that we got going on. We got a countdown for this. We got Petrovic, Adriana Grace, JC Jane, and we got Jasmine Nikes. And ultimately, we do get an all-around action on this one, just to give you a quick touch base. But ultimately, a lot of young talent in here. JC Jane also being kind of the seasoned vets in this one. But we do have a little bit of back and forth, and ultimately we do get the winner of the tag team match, Carmen Petrovic and Ariana Grace, kicking out the win in this one. And again, it did its job. It got a lot of young talent on the pre-show, got us a little excited, got to test out that ring, make sure it's good for the main event. And it's definitely going to be good for this next matchup that is going to get into. And I tell you what, this might have been my match of the night for me. Oba Femi versus Wes Lee, and that's a tough choice to make because there was so much good on this HEATWAVE PLE. But we do have the North American Championship, and I tell you what, Oba Femi, he's big, he's bad, he's the North American champion. He's got it all going on. He's got the perfect combination. He's part of the NXT college program for those next in line type moments. But ultimately, coming from, I believe he was a linebacker in Alabama that made his way to the WWE. And Oba Femi definitely, had a great style. He's got a good complex mix of up with Wes Lee in this championship matchup. It starts off with Lee hitting a boot on Femi's midsection, trying to work the trunk of the tree here. Lee then looks to hit a second one, but Femi catches Lee and trips Lee and delivers some right hands to Femi's midsection, but Femi sends Lee in the corner and looks like he's going to hit a big boot. Femi then hits Lee with an oblique breaker and then places Lee on the top rope before knocking him to the outside. Lee quickly drops, recovers, hits a missile drop kick, and Femi is back inside. He hits the shoulders and he sends him crashing to the mat. Ultimately, in this matchup, we get a lot of back and forth. We get a little action on the outside. Wes Lee's speed was really keeping pace with Oba Femi while making Oba Femi look super strong, flinging him all around the ring. But we do get a lot of the outside, a lot of damage being done there in this one. And then we do get, back later on in the matchup, we get a Hurricane Rod on Femi. Later on, we get Femi blocking Lee with power bombs, cut off in the middle rope, but Lee nails Femi with a cardiac kick and goes for the pin, but Femi kicks out. Lee hits the frog splash off the ropes on Femi. Femi will clothesline himself and then right out of the ring, and then ultimately Lee lands on the apron and looks to fly, but Femi nails Lee with a shoulder breaker and gets him back inside the ring. Lee hits Femi with a knee to the side of his head, follows up with a double stomp on his spine, looks to hit the cardiac kick, but Femi catches Lee, and Lee escapes, and Femi hits a thrust kick. Lee then once again goes for the cardiac kick again. Is it gonna work? I don't think so, but Femi sees him coming, and he crashes into the mat. And Femi hits Lee with the sit-out power bomb for the 1, the 2, the 3. And Oba Femi is still your very strongly booked NXT North American Championship. I feel like this is the perfect spot on the card. As Femi develops, he's going to be hitting and holding the second-tier title in NXT and just getting better each week as we go. They keep throwing opponents at him. Some very chewable for him, but others like Wes Lee was a great challenge. Wes Lee showed a little frustration afterwards. Hey, If you guys like NXT, hit the like button. Helps out the channel, helps your algorithm. But then again, thanks again for being a subscriber if you already are and coming back. We like talking all things wrestling here. Hit it up in the comments below. Also hitting up, we got the North American Women's Championship now getting their shot at the second opening match here of the night. Kalani Jordan will take on Sol Ruca. Sol Ruca is a nice up-and-comer in the NXT brand. I gotta be honest, I didn't know much of her. I see a little bit of her on NXT's development show, but ultimately I did watch a little more Sol Ruca. She just kind of has that surfer vibe that grabbed me and drew me into her work. And as I've watched and paid attention to her a little more and more, I have become a fan of her work. How will she fare with Kalani Jordan? Well, these two actually had a pretty good style and a good match off as both men taking turns, taking each other down, going with some submission locks early on. Jordan hits a crossbody on Ruca out of the corner. Ruca hits the drop toe hold on Jordan. And Jordan responds with a low crossbody. Ruca then hits a face buster on Jordan and puts her in the bow and arrow. Jordan hits an arm drag on Ruca. You got to get the idea of this. Later on in the match, we get a 450 splash from the apron. Jordan and Ruca exchange on the forearms with each other, but Jordan nails Ruca with the Pele kick. Jordan then follows it up with a Poison Rana, a springboard moonsault on Ruca on the outside. Fast forward a little bit more in the matchup. From a 450 splash, we get a 630 splash of Ruca off and hits Jordan with that 630 splash. And then Ruca hits Jordan in an electric chair position. And Jordan looks to escape, but Ruca hangs on to Jordan and catapults her into the corner, then climbs to the top with still an electric chair position. Jordan hits the Poison Rana on Ruca and follows up with a split-legged moonsault for the 1, the 2, and the 3. We get the win. Again, still NXT Women's North American Champion Kalani Jordan. After the match, Jordan helps Ruca up. She's got to respect. Ruca holds Jordan's hand for the show of respect here, and Jordan celebrates her win with the NXT Universe. Not a bad matchup. We're 2 for 2 so far, and I do like seeing Sol Ruca. It's not her time to hold a title. She's a little newer to the brand, but Kalani Jordan was the right pick here, in my opinion. And speaking of the next matchup, we get an NXT Tag Team matchup. Entrances for both teams, and we get Nathan Frazier and Axiom, the champions, versus Chase U with the whole entourage at ringside. Ultimately, Frazier and Axiom, the supersonic duo, that is the tag team name for them. Both they start off with Axiom and Andre Chase, but both men take turns locking each other in submission holds. How does Andre Chase wrestle with that sweater on? I gotta wonder, I gotta know. And a guy has got to be having some major deodorant going on underneath there. But Chase basically tags in, and we get a double team on Frazier with Hudson. Axiom then tags in a double team on Chase with Frazier. We get a lot of back and forth tag matchup that you would expect in this one. Ultimately, it didn't disappoint, but it didn't overly go over the top either. It got its job done in this one. I won't spend too much time on it. We do get a Razor's Edge moment from Frazier that's looking to hit the Razor's Edge on his opponent, but Frazier then counters with a Hurricane Rod that sends Hudson crashing into the corner. Axiom tags in, flies with Frazier to land on Chase U on the outside for a big spot. And then we fast forward a little bit more towards the end of this matchup, and we go to take it home. And we got ultimately Axiom tagging in, hits a double team with Chase with Frazier, and then Frazier then flies over the top rope, lands on Hudson outside, and Axiom hits Chase with the golden ratio inside the ring for the 1, the 2, and the 3. We've got the win and the pin. The winners and still tag team champions, the supersonic duo of Nathan Frazier and Axiom. You want to talk about a great stable, a great team up? My co-host over there at thefansofprowrestling.com. We've got the Wrestling Fans Insight, but we got so much more. We've got a lot of other great podcasts and shows with Ted's Takes, among many others. Take us a look over there. We get on in. We got the NXT Women's Championship up next with Roxanne Perez versus Lola Vice. Interesting note here. You guys know that followed me on the channel for a while. I don't pop for rocks. I'm not a big pop rocks fan. I'm not really overly over the top on Roxanne Perez. Her style usually does not draw me in. I do like Lola Vice though. I've been very big on her. I watched some of her NXT Underground stuff. And I've also watched her, rise up to the top. And would it be enough to make me into this one here? We got Prodigy Perez versus Lola Vice in this one. And I will say this matchup did its job. And it got me excited about a Roxanne Perez matchup. Not that I have anything against her. I just, I thought, we need a little bit more. And I think we got it here with Lola Vice. The match starts off with Perez hitting the opening palm strike and Vice, and Vice responds by shoving Perez, locking his submission hold immediately on her, hitting that NXT Underground mode. Vice then looks to hit the crossarm breaker. Perez counters into a roll-up. Vice then kicks out and hits a mat, and then Vice then looks to hit the 305 on Perez, but Perez rolls out of it, avoiding it. We go a little bit more further in the match. Vice sends Perez repeatedly bouncing off the turnbuckle. And Perez responds with a hair whip on Vice and pulls on her hair. Perez then sends Vice into the corner, then follows it up with an uppercut, and then followed in a Russian leg sweep. Very nice classic move there. We move a little bit forward even more. Towards the end, we get Vice going for a 305, sending Perez crashing out of the ring. Vice then hits Perez in the back of the ring and pins her. 1 and a 2. Ultimately, Perez gets a boot on her. And then we get some Pop Rocks moments. Perez looks to hit the Pop Rocks on Vice, but Vice counters the maneuver and delivers a roundhouse kick on Perez. Then Vice looks to hit the 305, but Perez counters with the Pop Rocks again and goes for a pin. Not quite enough. Vice kicks out at the 1 and a 2. And then Perez sends Vice out of the ring, clears the announcer's desk, and Perez gets Vice on top of it. Hits the Pop Rocks, and boo! That table does not break, and that looks like it hurts. Perez then sends Vice into the ring, goes for the pin. Vice somehow manages to kick out again. Perez then delivers the hammer and anvil elbow on Vice's arm. Crossface hits her with the Pop Rocks for the 1, the 2, and the 3. The Prodigy Perez gets the win here over a decent competition with Lola Vice. Speaking of decent competition, we go on to the main event. We've got NXT Championship in a Fatal 4-Way. Fatal 4-Ways are like the sampler platter of NXT. Fatal 4-Way, non-elimination, straight up. We got Trick Williams, the champion, going against and trying to beat the odds of fellow NXTer Javonna Evans. Also, newcomers to NXT, but from AEW, Ethan Page and Shawn Spears. We're not getting into that Forbidden Door type thing, but it does look a little bit like that. We get a great start off in this matchup. It's a lot of fun watching these guys kind of do their thing. We get Page jumping out of the ring, wanting to let Williams, Evans, and Spears brawl among themselves, playing the sleazy heel roll. Evans then hits the Tope Suicida on Page to take him down on the outside as Williams and Spears brawl in the ring. Williams hits a body slam on Spears, sending him crashing to the outside, and him exchange right hands with each other. Spears and Page then send Williams and Evans bouncing off the ring steps, looking to compete with each other, kind of one-upping each other. Page and Spears, after jawing with each other, end up returning on each other by hitting eye rakes on each other. They get in the ring, they face off, and then they shake hands. Then they pop each other right in the eye with a double eye rake on each other. Evans then nails Spears, and Williams hits a neck breaker. Evans, being the high flyer in this matchup, added a lot of excitement. And this young kid, just turning 20 years old only a few months ago, is such a young, talent in NXT. We ultimately do have Williams nailing Evans with a clothesline and a body slam. We got a nice mix-up from some guys that are used to being in the ring with Spears. There were a couple spots in the matchup where Trick Williams seemed to kind of, one-on-one matches he does really well in. He did seem to kind of, look for those different spots, and took him a little bit. His timing was off a little in this matchup, but hey, what do I know? I mean, at the end of the day, I think these guys did enough job to cover for each other and any small mistakes they might have made. But overall, I did enjoy the match, and I was very much into this competition for that first half, and I noticed we were more than halfway through the match before we got kind of a rest period briefly and some moves. But ultimately, it picked right back up after that. And then you're wondering, who's going to win? How's this going to go? I had Trick Williams as the winner, and I feel like that should have happened. But what we ultimately do get is Ethan Page taking the title and getting a NXT Championship win as Trick Williams, Javon Williams, here's the thing, is on the outside. Trick Williams hits, and he hits a trick shot, boom, right on Ethan Page, who falls on to his opponent and gets the 3 count as Trick Williams is being pulled from the outside. So, excuse me, it was Javon Evans actually in the ring. Not Adam Page, but Ethan Page, all ego, falls on to Javon Evans, given the pin in this one. Ultimately, as Shawn Spears pulls Trick Williams out of the ring at the last second, and he has to watch his title get just stripped away. So the winner and NXT champion is all ego, Ethan Page. After the match, Page gloats and poses with the NXT championship. And then we get a real quick clip of Joe Hendry's entrance video, and the show comes to a close with a little bit of preview of the Great American Bash coming up here in a few weeks. And we do get Joe Hendry making a return to that show. But ultimately, we do have a nice little main event here at the Fatal 4-Way Sampler Platter, as I like to call it, with NXT HEATWAVE. Let's get into the final thoughts. And here they are. The final thoughts are, the Sampler Platter of the Fatal 4-Way was a nice, fun, entertaining matchup. But also, I enjoyed Obafemi versus Wes Lee in the power technical style versus the technical speed style of NXT. I do question the idea of taking the World Championship off of Trick Williams in a controversial finish, and I do wonder kind of what is next for Trick. I felt like his championship just being won a few months ago, I felt like there was more seasoning to put on that steak before we take the title off of him in this type of matchup. But in the future, what does it mean? It means all ego Ethan Page and the all elite Forbidden Door group that we got kind of going here could be a little bit more of the next wave of HEATWAVE of NXT showing off in the section here. I'm going to go ahead and head out. Those are my results and thoughts. Thank you guys so much. Like, share, subscribe, and it's not goodbye. It's game over.